We have three speakers are going to stick, all the speakers are going to stick around with us this evening, and we're going to talk about these advanced wireless networks, more of an informal setting. Let's talk about what's happening and what we can expect. So we have some ideas here we wanted to share with the audience, and that is, I mentioned earlier in my presentation that 5G isn't just one thing. There's three separate bands out there. So Nabeel, can you share with us maybe, T-Mobile has what they call their layer cake approach. Would you like to share that with us and explain what that is?
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me. A little bit about me. I'm with the enterprise team here in the Bay Area with T-Mobile for Business, being a customer advocate on telecom, IoT, 5G, networking, and beyond technologies. And really honored to be with you guys today. In terms of your question, Rick, I just wanted to kind of make it a little bit lighter if we can, given the year, the time we're in. Probably you're wondering what the heck is that in a deep technical conversation, but it's 2020. I think that's a simple answer for any and everything we see today. But in 2020, we're seeing wild things like a wireless company teaming up to make a cake mix. Pretty well. The year's been rough for everyone, and we think everyone needs a little bit sweetness in the news cycle in their lives and whatnot. But I really want to use this as sort of an easier way to just go deeper into what you had shared, Rick, earlier in the conversation, and also share some insights from the T-Mobile side in terms of the three layers of spectrum. Which is what we're, betting on with our 5G. Dedicated spectrum, low, mid, and high band, low and mid band are really the foundations of what we're, working on and tracking as a leader of innovation, so to speak, in this space. So starting with low band, that's, and please pardon my cheesy references. Again, I'm trying to make it a little bit lighter. So that's like the firm base layer that you need for any cake, so to speak. But really, the spectrum travels far and wide and brings 5G speeds to more places. In rural Iowa, Illinois, we have customers, enterprise, and also in the pandemic environment, looking to provide connectivity to their employees that are, kind of based in very remote locations. We're leveraging this technology to provide reliable connectivity. And T-Mobile was the first and the largest nationwide 5G network. On this spectrum, we're covering, 250 million Americans currently across 1.3 million square miles and adding more. And, this is information you can find online. It's publicly available. And then the mid-band is really the spectrum that I guess, the sweet spot, so to speak, in this cake. So that's the tasty mid-cake layer, and we, the Un-carrier, will really have a major supply of this mid-band spectrum because of some strategic investments made over the last 7 years in this industry, buying the spectrum in government auctions, and also with the Sprint merger, our friends brought along a lot of goodies. So we're leveraging this spectrum and really building on that 5G foundation. This allows us for faster speed, more capacity, fast download speeds, 300 to 500 Mbps on average, and 8 to 10 times faster than LTE today. Obviously, topping at gigabytes per second and more. But yeah, this is where we're really trying to give that fast 5G experience to thousands of cities and towns. Currently 7,500 cities and towns, and we're tracking to cover 100 million pops by the end of the year on this spectrum. And then the high band, which is, the flashy cake copper, as you can see there. It is, great for small, dense urban environments. I think, Rick, you shared some insights there. And there are a lot of good use cases shared by Ganesh as well. We're looking to leverage it, kind of augmented with our mid-band in urban areas, and for, industrial IoT scenarios. But that's really it in a nutshell. I kind of just wanted to go deep into what, we are positioning the 3 dedicated spectrums for 5G, and, in our true Un-carrier fashion, for first to launch nationwide 5G, first to launch standalone 5G, and then, of course, the first wireless company to ever make a cake.
So I think it's important, yeah, that people understand that it takes all of these 3 to have a good solution for the consumer, right? So not just one ingredient by itself is going to cut it. So
absolutely.
Let's see. We've talked a lot about 5G networks in terms of public carriers and networks, but there's also private 5G networks. How do they compare to public slices? So, Susanne, I think you have some information you can share with us, how the 2 differ and how people are planning to use maybe private networks in addition to the public carriers.
Sure, yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. So, right now to enable enterprise connectivity, a company has a couple of basic options. One is that it can connect to a public 5G network, or it can opt for a private 5G network. And there's a couple of ways to do that. Either a company can purchase its own private 5G network infrastructure and then contract out with a mobile operator to get operational support for managing that network. Or the company could build and maintain its own 5G network, private network, by using its own spectrum. So a couple different ways that they could do that. And in our survey, we asked what they would prefer, whether they're going to prefer using these, what are called the public 5G slices, where they get a portion of the wireless network, which is owned and managed by a carrier, and then exclusively assigned to their company, or whether they would prefer that they own their own private 5G network outright, or whether they want a combination. And what we found was that a quarter of them preferred a public 5G slice. I believe that those are in progress now, probably not fully available yet, but a quarter of them said they would prefer that. About a quarter also said that they would prefer to own their own private 5G network outright. And 43% said they prefer to use a combination depending on use cases. So I think if you remember back to some of the things I said in my presentation on some other questions like this, they were opting for that combination, it depends, it's a combination. So I think right now we're not seeing strong preferences for one or the other, but they're kind of hedging their bets by saying a combination is what they're thinking.
Ganesh, do you have any experience with private networks you can share with us?
Yeah, we are starting to see a lot of evolution. If that's okay, I can share my screen and go through an example. Is that okay, Rick?
Yes, I've unshared, so you should be able to take over.
Thank you very much. When we take a closer look at, there are many examples, but so this example is actually tied to a factory setting. Let's assume it's a very large factory and it has 1,000 video cameras, 50 robots, a lot of factory automation. So this massive amount of data, both video and sensor data, that is actually moving back and forth. Interestingly, for it to be meaningful, it has to be fed into an application which will actually start to give them controls, provide them insights, and also help them take corrective actions too. And when you start to slice the problem, it's very evident we really need a fabric. And this communication fabric could be a physical wires, and that's today's ground truth. Some of them, they use Wi-Fi, some of them, they use Bluetooth. But interestingly, with the evolution of 5G and Wi-Fi 6, industries are actually starting to take a closer look at 5G and Wi-Fi 6 to see if they can use that or in combination as a fabric between various equipment, camera, sensors, and so on, and to the central system, which can actually start to surface insights. A very, very interesting transformation. And a combination of 5G and Wi-Fi 6. Many of them, they actually speak these, prefer to take this path only because they're starting to understand the strengths of these different networks. And depending upon the needs, they might just go with 5G, go with a combination of 5G, Wi-Fi, or in few cases, they might use public 5G. The difference between public 5G and a private 5G in this scenario, anything and everything within the factory setting, it should be guaranteed that the network is up all times. And oftentimes, though the initial implementation cost is slightly on the higher side, having a localized network for the problem that we're discussing makes more sense in many scenarios. And people are taking a very closer look at 5G private and in few cases, Wi-Fi 6 as well.
So Nabeel, you talk to a lot of customers, right, in your occupation. So what have you heard from customers? Have you talked to any customers who are looking at private solutions?
Certainly, I think Susanne and Ganesh, offered very much sort of frontline analysis of what we're hearing. Only one thing I would add is, early adopters. I think now we're seeing a new suite of early adopters. There were seaports, airports, other sort of logistical hubs, but now I'm seeing, over the next 5 years or 5 to 7 years, as Ganesh said, it'll trickle down more into private enterprises, public enterprises, and become the wireless standard for any environment that's demanding, flexibility, reliability, and that constant connectivity. So, yeah, that's what I would add to that.
Okay, another question I think might be interesting to our audience is maybe we can spend a few minutes and talk about what are some of the new possibilities with this technology. We've seen a few examples and some possible enterprise applications. Ganesh, can you expand upon potentially what some of these new enterprise applications we might see coming with 5G?
Oh, definitely, yes, Rick. If that's okay, again, let me share my screen. So this is, I'm hoping you all are able to see my screen. This is a very interesting use case. So what you see is a cell tower in this case, but it could be any tower. But it's very high. And there's a lot of safety issues to really go and inspect a tower, a lot of safety issues to go inspect a bridge, a lot of safety issues to go inspect an oil pipeline in remote locations. And as we all know, drones are really evolving and are getting smarter by the day and have video cameras on board. And this example is one to improve efficiency and simultaneously provide tremendous amount of safety. If it is not a drone, a person has to do it. And also with artificial intelligence, as the video feed is coming in, let's take a classic example of a bridge inspection. And the video camera is actually recording the bridge at very high definition. And the video is flowing into the edge appliance. I mean, we just named it Leo because it's our platform. So, and it has all the smarts in terms of machine learning. And the video is fed to the machine learning algorithms, and it's looking at the video feed and carefully inspecting using machine learning to see if there are cracks or precursor to cracks too. With human eye inspection, we can actually look at a crack and then say, yes, this is a crack. But with advancement in machine learning, when you actually start to scan through the bridge, there are likely scenarios where there could be precursor even before a crack comes in. And that's where AI would play a very big role here and in many scenarios as well. What's more relevant to us as an experience at home? Already we have this thermostats which are cloud controlled and so on. With artificial intelligence, slowly the thermostat is actually understanding our behavior and our family's behavior too. Now we don't have to do anything with the thermostat because it learned you already. It knows when you go out. It knows when you come back in, and then suddenly because of the pandemic, the situation has changed. It's observing that you're more in the house, and you said, my comfortable temperature is 78 degrees, ensure that it's 78 at all times. And we don't have to do anything at all. It just keeps doing that. So these are a few that I can actually cite, which are like today, now. One touches upon our own experience within the house. Two, safety, which is like super important. AI, 5G, video, virtual reality, convergence of all these things are applied to enhance human safety as well.
I think a lot of these new technologies are not really familiar with them yet, and so we have to, almost out of the box thinking of how to apply them to increase safety and efficiency. It's yeah, these are things we haven't done before, right? So it's new territory for all of us.
Right.
Nabeel, have you heard from any customers what they're doing with how they're implementing these new applications with 5G?
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic examples, Ganesh. I'm like, now what should I talk about? But I'll just add one point. While consumers are certainly benefiting from 5G now, and now it's kind of mainstream. But I'm also of the opinion that this is actually, in a lot of ways, first generation of mobile wireless communications built to handle enterprise use cases, right? Especially in the end-to-end space. So consumer applications to what you were speaking about, Rick, earlier, can handle well above 20 millisecond latency, whether it's YouTube or something on your cellular device. But end-to-end applications, IoT, machine learning, they really require sub millisecond. So 5G obviously is expected to surpass 4G by far in handling latency issues and whatnot. Very high downlink speeds, tens of gigs of gigabytes per second. Obviously very low latency and higher capacity. So 1 million plus concurrent connections per square kilometers and even more. That's what's kind of opening a lot of opportunities for us. I think in terms of use cases, what Ganesh highlighted would be what I would go with, but I just thought this would be a sort of a nice insight to add to that.
I'm really hoping personally we start seeing implementations of things like smart cities and intelligent traffic. If you're driving late at night and you pull up to an intersection and you wait for a red light and there's no traffic, it's like, why did just because the sensor is only 15 feet from the crosswalk, it doesn't know you're there, and it takes time for the lights to transition. It should be nice if I could do something like, I'm also a private pilot, and we file flight plans, and I say, I'm going to be traveling from here to there. It would be great to optimize my route, let people know ahead of time. I'm going to be on the freeway. I need to reserve some space for my capacity. Is it available? Is the parking lot going to have a place for me to park when I get there? I'm really looking forward to some of these new applications making our life simpler. And I'm excited about things like, we haven't really talked about the smart city. Also frustrates me when I see emergency services, right? People aren't pulling over on the side of the road to let them pass. That infuriates me as well. So hopefully these inter-car communications, autonomous driving can solve some of these challenges we have today. Susanne, do you have any ideas as far as new applications?
I have one observation, which is, if you think about our personal mobile devices, when we had the old-fashioned ones a few generations ago that were just capable of sending small amounts of data, but not yet capable of having apps on them. I think we're in that phase now with the enterprise networking and 5G, because I think we can't quite imagine yet what is coming and what these new technologies are going to enable. But I think it's going to be very exciting when it gets here. Just as our phones have become these devices that are really incredible with apps on them and huge speed, I think we're kind of heading for a revolution with enterprise apps as well. And I can't quite envision what it will be, but I know it will be quite exciting.
I know I don't know if I'm excited about the day when, Domino's delivers my pizza by a drone. Uh, I'm a recreational model flyer. And I know there's a lot of issues as far as controlling airspace. We have some freedoms today that we might have to give up because, we don't have the density of traffic today in our airspace, right? Jets fly thousands of feet above us, but now we have things that are flying below 500 feet potentially for these new business models like distribution, um, grocery deliveries, pizza delivery, what have you. I feel bad about the high school student who's going to potentially lose his pizza delivery job to the drone. We're all going to have to re-educate ourselves too, as far as new and different opportunities. We won't know until they come. I'm excited and scared at the same time. I'm not sure what the what the ramifications are going to be. Roger, do we have any interests, or I don't say interest, but do we have any questions from the audience they would like us to address? Uh-oh. He seems to be pondering the question. So yeah, if you haven't already, feel free to submit questions and we can take them and discuss them on the panel with our experts that are here with us tonight and give you our educated guesses or past experience that we can share with you.
We haven't received any on the chat board yet.
Wow. Okay. Well, this is meant to be a two-way street. We tried to put, so we thought were some common topics here to hopefully get the creative juices flowing, give you some ideas of what you could potentially ask. So, but that's okay if we don't have questions. We definitely wanted you to have the opportunity to ask questions. I think a lot of this might be, this is so new to most of us, right? I took the survey at the beginning of the meeting. Nobody had a 5G phone yet, right? So I don't think we really know what we're in for yet, right? And a lot of this technology hasn't even been deployed yet for us to even start experiencing or observing, right? Automated cars, they keep talking about them, but I haven't really seen one on the road except, Google drives down my street and takes a map of every house along the way, but that's semi-autonomous driving. But I haven't really seen people using them to get to work every day, right? I do apparently like the Tesla cars. I guess you can get on the freeway and let go and they will take over, change lanes and get off one freeway and onto the other without the human having to steer the car. I'm an auto enthusiast. It seems like that takes the fun out of it, but if it becomes a chore, I definitely can see its benefits. I'm excited about the opportunities that, we've been limited by two-dimensional transportation right now, right? We've been using automobiles on the surface. These private drones, we have 3 dimensions. We can get a lot more traffic through the city if we did it vertically and not just, I don't know what to say, horizontally on the ground, right? There's one of the things I like being a private pilot is you get to skip a lot of the traffic. You get to fly a straight line. You don't have to go around the windy curves around the mountain or zigzag up the side of the mountain because the grade, right? To get the right altitude because your car can't go straight up the mountain. We have a lot of advantages with other forms of transportation that hopefully we can start seeing everyday use of.
Oh, we just got a request from one of the attendees.
Great.
About the healthcare issues, potential healthcare issues and EMF radiation.
Are they online? Can they potentially speak up for us? Or
the question specifically is, what is the EMF potential with 5G phones?
Okay. I'm assuming, are we talking about some of the news stories been going around? Is this, well, I don't know.
Well, my understanding is that
Health in general?
Actually, I personally have an EMF meter, and I've measured the strength of the signals close to my cell phone, and it's quite strong. And I have a 4G phone. Mm-hmm. So the question would be, as we move to 5G, will it get safer or less safe? Or, what are people's thoughts?
There's been a lot of headline news that we didn't really cover as far as, people blaming coronavirus as a result of 5G deployments. I think most of those have been debunked. I'm biased because I'm from the telecommunication industry, so I've always been told it's definitely safe. I think practical terms, it does contain less energy than light. So, if you're afraid of radiation, you're being exposed to radiation every time you go out into the sunlight, and it's just any more dangerous than that. It's debatable. But the one thing I would say is all these generations of technology have actually decreased the amount of power that we're emitting from your cell phone. You're at less risk today than you used to be before. When I had my cell phone in the beginning, they were 3 watts. They used to be car phones. Remember, they mounted them in the trunk of your car because it really wasn't safe for you to sit next to it because they were so powerful. And then we got the bag phone, which you carried around, but you still kept it, a foot away from you, right? And it was on the table, briefcases. And then we have the handheld phones I've been walking around with now, right? They're only, what are they, 0.6 watts, I believe. And then those are deemed to be safe enough. And we're sticking them up to our face, right? We didn't do that with a bag phone or a car phone. You didn't put it right up to your head. But as these devices get closer to us and we're interacting with them more, I could definitely see, people's concern about the increased exposure. But I can share the trend has been to decrease the power of these systems. I talked about 5G has a very weak signal. It only propagates, maybe 1,000 meters or shorter. Those are very weak, short signals. So all of those potentially, even though they're higher frequency, they're lower amplitude. And so they actually pose a lot less risk. That's my opinion. I know it's up for debate. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on the topic or share their 2 cents. Anyone speaking up? But it made for fascinating news. I know in like the UK and stuff, there was a huge news stream about, coronavirus, but 5G's been out in the wild longer than coronavirus has been detected. So I don't know. I don't think so, but it makes for good stories.
Okay.
So I would just say, yeah, if you're worried about radiation, EMF, look at some of the other devices you come in contact with on a regular basis, your microwave and other appliances that we take for granted. It's likely you're getting similar or worse exposure from other sources. But that's my opinion. Any other questions from the audience? We can take them live if you didn't send them in earlier. Going around, wait and see if anyone responds. How are we doing on time? Okay, so we don't necessarily have to keep it here till 8. I would like to give the presenters an opportunity maybe to give any final closing words. So Dr. Hupfer, would you like to, is there anything we didn't cover you want to close out with?
I would just mention that, if you were interested in the presentation, keep an eye on what the Center for Technology, Media and Telecom produces, because we're likely to keep studying this topic. And in fact, we're very interested in how answers to our questions might have changed given the pandemic. It was kind of unfortunate that all our data gathering had already just closed when the pandemic hit. But
is this something you plan to do, or is there any plan to repeat the study next year and going forward, or is this a one-time?
I doubt it's a one-time thing. I mean, there's no firm plans right now, but I know there's enough interest in it that we'll probably repeat it or possibly expand it to other countries in the coming months. So, one thing we're particularly interested in is how did things change given the pandemic situation? Is that causing companies to accelerate their investments in advanced networking, or are they putting the brakes on? And my hypothesis right now is that probably the pandemic is accelerating the investment and the forward movement in this space. I'd kind of be interested if Nabeel and Ganesh have thoughts on that from their experiences.
Susanne, I agree with you. Actually, the acceleration has astronomically increased because of the pandemic, primarily because when we start to look at our experiences, video for us, for consumer consumption, has gone up drastically. And take a closer look at or even a restaurant setting. Robots, primarily because we want to ensure pandemic is addressed too. So people are getting more creative, which is translating to the innovative way how I look at what we are all living through is to accelerate innovation in certain areas, primarily to address change. So it's interesting from the technology perspective, but time will come. I'm sure these new technologies which we thought could take 5 years might be there out in 1 year. So that's my view, but I agree with you, Susanne.
You know, we just got another really good question.
Okay.
The question is, previously, the network was typically the choke point. Now, with the increase in bandwidth and reduction in latency with the new technology, what will be the new choke point? So previously, the network was typically the choke point. Now that that is eliminated, what will be the new choke point?
Well, I can quickly hypothesize, and that is Ganesh was talking about we're using more and more pushing the computing power out to the edge to where it's being used. And so we need more powerful devices out there to handle these edge computing. So you probably had a dumb device out there in the field before. Now you're gonna have a smart device out there in the field. So now compute might become a choking point if the network is, significantly improved. And I also would like to say that, or want to say that performance is relative, right? What we think is poor performance this year, we thought was fantastic performance 10 years ago. So I think just our expectations are going to be the next choking point. We're going to start taking this all for granted and wonder how we ever lived without these super speeds that we're talking about coming in the near future. So I think just our human nature is that, but I'll let the other speakers respond as well. So anyone else want to take that question?
Sure. What you said is right. The way how I would try to explain is, in the past, network was the fabric. And interestingly now, the new fabric is beyond network. You need compute as well, primarily because you're seeing all these video frames, but if you have to really apply artificial intelligence closer to where the need is, you really need compute too. The workload or the load of all applications was more two-dimensional, where a record goes in or an image gets downloaded. But today, artificial intelligence has to be applied to a record. It has to be applied to video streams too. So for us, as we take a closer look at it, the new choking point definitely is compute. But interestingly, there's very good progress in the compute space too. I'm sure many of you are familiar with GPUs. DPUs are on its way. Quantum is on its way. So there's always a race. So as the demand goes up, innovation happens, and then we try to address the situation too. But I concur with what Rick said. Compute would be the choking point.
Susan, do you want to weigh in, or do you agree?
I can't really add anything to that. I think it's a great question, and I think what you both said about the edge and compute is probably a good hypothesis.
Nabeel, anything you want to add to what you see as a choking point?
I agree with both of you, Rick and Ganesh. For us, it's a bit of a positive position to be in as a network provider. As we're providing all the capacity, right? We're providing the speeds, the capacity, and everything that goes with the pipe that we're offering. We want our OEM partners, hardware partners, to catch up, to really come up with the solutions that meet the moment, so to speak. So we're feeling that we're in a better place from a spotlight perspective. So that's what I'll add to that.
I guess I would hypothesize maybe some other responses, and that would be congestion, right? The household is increasing from 11 devices to 50 devices. Also, all these devices, it's a lot of busy chattering going on in the background, right? They're all just staying in sync with each other, additional overhead. And what was the other aspect I was going to say? Oh, here's the one. So all of this comes at a cost. The fact that you have 1.5 gigabit of download speed on your smartphone device, you can run out of money a lot faster now. The expenses are going to increase. So I think your budget is going to be a constraining factor. You can consume it probably, maybe a challenge to run up a huge bill on 3G before, but now you can suck down so much data so quickly, you can easily run up an expensive bill with these before, it can get out of hand really quickly with these high speeds. So I think we have to be careful in managing our expenses. So I think the cost is potentially a choking point too. Do you see any other questions out there, Roger? Maybe not. Get a response from you?
No.
No, looking good.
Nothing in the chat.
Well, I think we've had a productive meeting. Hopefully we've put up good competition for the presidential debate. Hopefully you guys learned something here that you can use I think, this information is applicable to really almost a decade. 4G was with us for almost 10 years. Some of the other generations didn't quite last that long, but this isn't just a 3-year cycle. I think we're in this, this is 5 to 10 years. We're going to be going down this journey together. So, we only elect a president for 4 years, but we'll probably be using 5G longer than that. So maybe I can close on that.